Let's raise a glass to Emily, my mother said, her voice trembling with pride. For saving the business, and keeping our family's name alive. The room erupted in clinking glasses and polite laughter. I sat at the end of the table, my fork hovering over a slice of dry roast, watching my younger sister smile like she'd just cured world hunger. The chandelier light caught the diamond on her wrist. My mother's bracelet, the one she'd promised to give me someday. I didn't move. Didn't speak. Just smiled. Small, polite, controlled. It was 7:42 p.m. Friday night. The family's weekly dinner. The air smelled of rosemary and hypocrisy. My sister lifted her glass, her red lipstick perfectly smudged around the rim. To hard work, she said. And to second chances. The room laughed again. Everyone except me. Second chances. That was rich. Coming from the woman who stole my idea, my project, my months of sleepless nights. And now they called it hers. I glanced around the table. My father grinning like a proud mentor. My brother-in-law tapping his phone under the table. My mother beaming as if nothing could possibly be wrong. No one looked my way. It was as if I had become part of the wallpaper. Faded, familiar, and invisible. Inside, I wasn't angry anymore. I was steady. Told. Because I knew something they didn't. There hidden deep in my purse was a flash drive. One they didn't know existed. I took a sip of wine, slow and deliberate. It burned down my throat, not unpleasantly. My husband leaned toward me whispering, "Don't do anything tonight. Please." I didn't look at him. Who said I would? I murmured, my eyes fixed on Emily's face. She was telling another story now. Something about late nights, long hours, how she rescued the company after my husband's illness. Rescued. She'd used that word before. The first time I heard it, I almost laughed. Now I felt nothing. I folded my napkin neatly, placed it beside my plate, and watched the steam rise from the mashed potatoes. The smell of butter and garlic filled the room, warm and heavy. It mixed with the perfume my sister wore, the one I'd bought her last Christmas. I remember thinking even her scent is borrowed. My mother turned to me suddenly. "Isn't it wonderful, honey? Emily's presentation last week went viral. Everyone's talking about it." I smiled. I heard. "She worked so hard," my father added. "Reminds me of someone else I know." There was a pause. Subtle, intentional. All eyes shifted toward me. I met my father's gaze. His eyes were kind, but there was something else beneath them. Pity, maybe. Or guilt. I couldn't tell anymore. "I'm glad the family's proud," I said quietly. "That's what matters, right?" Emily tilted her head, that sweet, condescending smile returning. "Of course, sis. You've always been my biggest inspiration." There was the performance. Polished. Practiced. I felt the air in my lungs tighten, but my voice came out calm. "I'm sure I have." Her eyes flickered just for a second. He knew. Maybe not everything, but enough to sense the storm behind my smile. The dinner dragged on, each minute stretching thinner than the gravy cooling on our plates. Conversations rose and fell like rehearsed dialogue. Emily talked about investors, my father about legacy, my mother about family traditions. No one asked how I was doing. The clock ticked toward 8:30. My husband kept checking his watch. When my sister began describing her design process, my process, I finally spoke. "Emily," I said softly, "that prototype you used, the one that won you the award. Do you remember where you first saw it?" The room went quiet. Forks clinked against porcelain. She blinked, smiling cautiously. "Of course. At the firm. I developed it after." "After what?" I asked, tilting my head slightly. She hesitated. Just for a breath. But it was enough. My father cleared his throat. "Let's not make tonight about business," he said. "We're here to celebrate." "Oh, I agree," I replied. "Celebrations are important. They remind us who we are, and who we aren't." My sister laughed awkwardly. "You're being dramatic again." I smiled back. "You think so?" There was something satisfying in her discomfort. Watching her pretend she didn't understand while knowing deep down that I'd already seen through every layer of her lies. After dinner, I helped my mother clear the table. The clatter of dishes, the faint hum of the dishwasher, it all sounded too normal for a night that was anything but. My mother glanced at me, lowering her voice. "You're quiet tonight." "I'm just tired," I said. "Still upset about work?" I shrugged. "I'll manage." He touched my arm. Your sister didn't mean to hurt you. You know how she gets, impulsive. I met her eyes. Impulsive? She stole months of my work and put her name on it. My mother sighed, tired. Honey, what matters is that she made something of it. For all of us. Sometimes that's what family does. We lift each other up. I looked at her hands, smooth, manicured, trembling slightly. Family, I repeated. That's one word for it. When everyone had gone home except my sister, I found her on the back porch smoking. The night air was cool, laced with the smell of damp grass and fading lilacs. She didn't look surprised to see me. You're mad, she said simply. Mad? I smiled. No. Disappointed maybe. But not mad. She exhaled smoke, avoiding my eyes. You don't understand. They needed something. The company was falling apart after your husband got sick. I had to step in. Step in? Or step over me? Her jaw tightened. I didn't have a choice. There's always a choice, I said. You just made yours. For a long moment neither of us spoke. The only sound was the rustle of wind through the trees. I watched her flick the cigarette, the ember glowing like a heartbeat before it died in the dark. You can't undo this, she whispered. I tilted my head. Who said I wanted to undo it? That made her pause. Confusion replaced defiance. She studied my face, searching for the sister she once knew. But that woman was gone. Inside my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen. A message from Mark, attorney. Asterisk all files received. Backing them up now. You were right, it's airtight. Asterisk. I locked the screen before she could see. Good night, Emily, I said, stepping past her. You should get some rest. Big week ahead. Her eyes narrowed. What's that supposed to mean? I didn't answer. Just smiled and closed the door behind me. The house felt emptier once she left, though the echoes of laughter still lingered in the air. I walked through the dining room, my heels clicking softly against the hardwood. The table was still set, half-filled glasses, a stained napkin, a smudge of lipstick on a plate. Evidence of the night's performance. I gathered the plates one by one, stacking them with precision. My husband entered quietly. You handled that better than I expected. I told you, I said, there's no need for scenes. He leaned against the counter. Whatever you're planning, just be careful. I'm always careful. You know what I mean. This family, they close ranks when threatened. I met his gaze. Then it's a good thing I'm not threatening them. He frowned, not believing me, but he didn't press. He knew better. Later, in the quiet of my study, I placed the flash drive on the desk. It was small, silver, harmless looking. But it held everything: emails, timestamps, drafts with metadata, even the night she accessed my laptop. I stared at it for a long time. My reflection shimmered on its surface, faint and tired. I remembered when Emily was little, when she used to sneak into my room and borrow my clothes, my jewelry, my perfume. She'd always say, I just want to be like you. Now she was. Only I had changed what that meant. I slipped the drive into a folder marked Family Records. Fitting, I thought. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the window pane. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled. The start of something. I turned off the lamp, the room bathed in the glow of the streetlight outside. My reflection in the glass looked calm. Too calm. Because I wasn't waiting for karma anymore. I was building it. And when it arrived, it would have my signature all over it. The next morning, as sunlight crept through the curtains, my phone rang again. Same number. Mark's voice came through, steady but curious. You sure you want me to move forward with this? I looked out at the garden, my mother's roses now half dead from neglect. Yes, I said. It's time they remembered who I am. I hung up before he could reply. The kettle whistled from the kitchen. I poured myself tea, sweetened it with honey, and sat by the window. Outside, the driveway was still empty, but I could already see it. The moment their cars would pull in again, their faces pale, their voices shaky, their control slipping. I stirred the tea slowly, the spoon clinking against the porcelain. Each sound felt deliberate, final. Because last night wasn't an ending. It was an opening act. And soon, they'd realize it too. The moment their faces vanished from my living room, replaced by the blank glow of the television screen I'd left on, I felt an ache spread through me. Not sadness, not yet, but something colder. I sat there, alone in the silence that follows confrontation. The same silence that used to scare me when my husband was alive. Now it felt like company. The wine glasses still held fingerprints. My sister's red lipstick on the rim of hers like a warning mark. I collected them one by one not because I cared about cleaning but because I needed my hands to do something. Something steady. The air smelled like burnt roast and hurt feelings. I could still hear the echo of her voice, sharp, dismissive, coated in fake sweetness. You wouldn't understand how the business works, Clara. I'd smiled then. I'm still smiling now, though for different reasons. Morning light slipped through the kitchen blinds as I rinsed the last glass. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't want to. My plan didn't need rest. It needed precision. There were pieces I had to move quietly before they realized I wasn't done playing. By 7 a.m. I was at the office. The parking lot was empty except for my car and the janitor's old van. The air had that crisp early fall bite, sharp enough to wake you up better than any coffee. I walked through the lobby without greeting the receptionist. I didn't want small talk. I wanted the truth. And I knew exactly where to find it. The key code to my late husband's filing cabinet was a 6-digit date no one ever remembered but me, his mother's birthday. He'd chosen it because it was safe from thieves and family alike. My fingers trembled slightly as I punched it in, more from memory than hesitation. The metallic click sounded like a heartbeat. Inside, dust, paper, and the scent of old leather. My husband had always been meticulous. Every document labeled, every folder dated. I ran my hand across the rows until I found the one marked 2020, partnership contracts. That year changed everything. That was the year my sister convinced me to share the idea, to grow the business together. The folder was heavy, stuffed with legal drafts, amendments, and email printouts. Proof that she hadn't just taken my idea, she'd signed it away. My throat tightened, but I didn't cry. Tears were for people who still hoped things could go back to normal. I passed that stage the night she called me irrelevant. I spread the papers across the mahogany desk, the morning sun warming one corner while the rest stayed in shadow. It felt symbolic somehow, light revealing what darkness thought it owned. The first page I read was a draft of our company agreement. I could still see my handwriting in the margins, small notes about expansion costs, timelines. Beside them, my sister's signature, bold, rushed, careless. Only this time it was on a version I'd never approved. They'd edited me out completely. Every word was a knife disguised as ink. But then I found something they hadn't meant to leave behind. An unsigned addendum. It listed percentages, hidden revenue channels, and false names attached to payments. The handwriting wasn't hers, it was my brother-in-law's. A man too confident to cover his tracks. I took out my phone and started scanning everything. One by one. Each beep from the scanner app felt like justice taking its first breath. I emailed them to myself, then to a folder under a fake name I'd created years ago. My husband used to tease me about being paranoid. I used to laugh. Not anymore. At 8:30 I heard footsteps and voices. My sister's laugh echoing down the hall, light and carefree. The same laugh that used to mean safety now meant war. I didn't move. I just lowered my voice and whispered, "You're early." The lock clicked as she entered, surprised to see me sitting there. "Oh, Claire, you're here. I didn't think you'd..." She stopped mid-sentence when she saw the files spread out before me. I smiled, polite. "Couldn't sleep. Thought I'd catch up on some old paperwork." My voice was calm, but my pulse was steady, sharp. She walked closer, her heels clicking in that perfect rhythm she'd always practiced. "You don't have to worry about those old drafts. We already filed the updated agreements months ago." I looked up at her. "I know. I've been reading them." Her eyes flickered just for a second, but I caught it. That quick, fearful shift behind confidence. She tried to mask it with a laugh. "Well, then you know everything's fine." I leaned back. "Yes. Everything's finally clear." Her mouth opened to reply, but her phone buzzed. She looked down, frowned, and excused herself to take the call. As soon as she stepped into the hallway, I slid the last few pages into my purse. I had what I needed. A voice broke my focus. It was Ethan, our head accountant, older, kind, always too nervous. "Morning, Mrs. Collins. You're in early." He smiled weakly. He'd worked with my husband for decades. Trusted him. Trusted me once too. "Just tying up loose ends," I said softly. His gaze dropped to the open files, and for a brief moment, guilt clouded his eyes. He knew. Maybe not all of it, but enough. "Ethan, I said, closing the drawer gently. Were you aware of these edits before they were submitted? His lips parted, then closed again. The pause told me everything. I thought you had approved them, he whispered. I didn't. I held his gaze. But you signed off, didn't you? He nodded once, ashamed. They said you gave verbal consent. They said, I repeated. Of course they did. He adjusted his glasses and lowered his voice. Mrs. Collins, if you're planning to reopen this, be careful. They've been cleaning things up. Digitally. I almost laughed. They can clean the digital files. But paper doesn't lie. I tapped the stack in front of me. Neither do signatures. He hesitated, then added, if you need backup, I can help. I still have access logs from when they changed the files. That was my first real ally. Quiet, loyal, and too afraid to betray me again. Send them to me, I said. Privately. By noon, I was back home with my purse full of evidence and my head full of noise. I brewed a cup of tea, but it tasted like metal. Every sip reminded me of the pen strokes that erased my name. I spread the documents across my kitchen table, right where my sister once sat, bragging about her latest expansion deal. The irony almost made me smile. That afternoon, I drafted a short email. No threats, no emotion. Just a clean subject line. Clarification of ownership agreements. Clara Collins. I attached 3 key documents and sent them to my lawyer friend, Marianne. She and I had gone to college together. Back when dreams were simpler and betrayal was just something we read about in novels. Within an hour, she replied, Clara, where did you get these? Do you realize what you're sitting on? Call me. Now, I didn't call. Not yet. Instead, I turned off my phone and stepped outside. The autumn wind carried the faint scent of burning leaves and rain on asphalt. It reminded me of the last time my husband and I argued. About trusting family, about letting people in. You see the good in them, he'd said. But they see opportunity. He was right. As the day faded, my resolve hardened. I wasn't going to expose them right away. No, I needed them comfortable, still thinking I was the naive, grieving widow who couldn't read between the lines. I wanted them to smile at me again, to feel safe in their deceit. Because that's when people make mistakes. That evening, I returned to the office one last time. Everyone was gone. The cleaning crew's vacuum hummed softly down the corridor. I walked past the glass conference room where they'd once laughed at my ideas. The memory replayed like a cruel film. My sister smiling, my parents nodding along, me sitting quietly with pride turning into humiliation. That's where I decided revenge wasn't just about justice. It was about restoration. About making them remember who I was before they rewrote me. I placed a small envelope in the bottom drawer of my sister's desk. Just one unsigned copy of the hidden addendum. No note, no warning. Just a seed of panic waiting to grow. On my way out, I passed the company's framed photo wall. Smiling faces, award nights, false promises. I paused at one picture. My husband and me at the company's 10th anniversary. His arm around me, both of us laughing. The plaque underneath read Founders, Clara and Julia Collins. They'd since replaced the logo. Now only Julia Collins and Partners shown in gold. I touched the glass lightly. Not for long, I whispered. Outside, the night air was colder than before, the wind sharp enough to sting. But I felt calm, certain. I had their signatures, their lies, their guilt, all bound neatly in black ink. For the first time since my husband died, I felt his presence again. Not in grief, but in guidance. They thought they'd buried me under paperwork. They didn't know I was digging my way out, with their own hands. They didn't know I was digging my way out, with their own hands. I stayed in that parking lot longer than I should have, the glow from the office windows spilling across the hood of my car. My breath fogged the glass as I sat there, engine off, thinking. The folder on the passenger seat looked almost innocent in the dim light, just paper and ink, but it pulsed with quiet power. My pulse matched it, steady and deliberate. I drove home slow, the night wind whispering against the windows. The streets were nearly empty, but my thoughts weren't. Every face from that family photo wall replayed in my mind. Every smile, every lie. By the time I reached my driveway, the anger had cooled into something else, clarity. When I stepped inside, the clock in the hall read 9:17. The house smelled faintly of lavender and old wood. I hung my coat, set the folder on the dining table, and stared at the empty chairs. This was where they'd all sat last week. Same table, same laughter. I could almost hear the echo of Emily's voice, bright and careless. I ran my hand across the table's surface. The polish was uneven, tiny scratches catching the light. I remembered my husband sanding this table years ago, smoothing every flaw until it gleamed. Now it felt scarred like me. My phone buzzed. Marianne again. Clara, this is bigger than you think. We need to talk before they realize what you found. I ignored it. Talking could wait. Tonight I needed silence and maybe something stronger than tea. I poured myself a glass of wine and carried it to the kitchen window. Outside the world looked calm. But calm is just what comes before a storm. I could feel it building. Somewhere deep inside something had shifted. Not just in me, in the air around me. A car pulled up outside. Headlights flashed through the blinds. For a second I thought it was Emily. I felt that same tightness in my chest, the one that used to come before every argument. But when I peeked out it was my neighbor leaving his porch light on. I exhaled. Too soon for ghosts. Still I couldn't shake the unease. Something about the night felt watchful. I walked back to the dining room, the floorboards creaking under my feet. The folder sat where I left it. I picked it up and slid it into the sideboard drawer, right next to my husband's old fountain pen. The one engraved with his initials. I hadn't used it in years, but tonight I felt like I might. Then came the sound, 3 soft knocks. Not the doorbell. Knocks. My breath caught. I froze. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened the door, the porch light flickered. A delivery boy stood there, barely 20, holding a paper bag. Evening, ma'am. Dinner order for Collins. My brow furrowed. You must have the wrong address. He checked the receipt. Says Clara Collins. Paid online. My hand tightened around the doorframe. Who sent it? He shrugged. Anonymous order, ma'am. Said it was for you. I hesitated, then took the bag. Inside, roasted chicken, mashed potatoes, and a slice of lemon pie. My husband's favorite meal. My stomach twisted. Did they leave a note? He shook his head. Just the order. I thanked him and closed the door, locking it twice. The scent filled the kitchen as I unwrapped the food. It wasn't from any place nearby. The plating was too precise, the garnish too familiar. This wasn't random. Someone knew. Someone remembered. I stared at the plate, my reflection warping in the silver knife beside it. For a moment I thought about throwing it all away. But curiosity won. I picked up the fork and tasted one bite. Warm. Tender. Too perfect. Then I saw it, a folded napkin tucked under the pie box. My fingers trembled as I pulled it out. No writing at first, just a smudge of lipstick, dark red. The same shade Emily always wore. And then, faintly beneath it, written in pencil, we should talk. I stared at those 3 words until they blurred. Now, after everything? I almost laughed. The clock ticked in the background, loud enough to fill the silence. I sat down, the chair creaking beneath me. I could picture her handwriting, that careful slant she practiced as a teenager. The W had her curl, the T her impatient slash. It was her. But how? She couldn't know what I'd done today. Unless Ethan talked. Or Marianne slipped. I stopped myself. Paranoia was useless right now. Control was everything. I poured another glass of wine and read the note again. We should talk. I decided then I would let her come to me. By the next evening I had my answer. My phone rang just as I was finishing a call with Marianne. I saw the name and almost smiled. Emily. I let it ring twice before answering. Clara, she said too sweetly. I was hoping you'd join us for dinner tomorrow. Family only. Mom's idea. Family, I echoed. Sounds lovely. She hesitated. You'll come. Wouldn't miss it. I hung up before she could say more. My reflection in the window looked steady, unreadable. The kind of calm that makes people nervous. Sunday night came too quickly. The house smelled like rosemary and lemon. My mother always said scent was memory, and maybe that's why every step toward that dining room felt like walking into the past. They dressed the table just like before. Candles, linen, fine china. My father at the head, Emily to his right. My mother hovering with her apron tied too tight. Clara, she said brightly when she saw me. You look beautiful. I'm so glad you came. Wouldn't miss it, I repeated. Emily smiled across the table, her lipstick the same deep red as the smudge on the napkin. I ordered dinner, she said casually. Thought I'd take the stress off, Mom. I smiled back slow. You always were thoughtful. The air tightened. My father began carving the chicken, the knife gliding through with ease. Just like old times, he said. Yes. Exactly like old times. Except it wasn't. Because now I knew what every person at that table had signed, what they'd hidden, what they'd gained by burying me. And I could see it in their eyes, the flicker of unease, the way they avoided my gaze. They knew something had shifted even if they couldn't name it yet. Halfway through dinner, Emily spoke. Clara, I stopped by the office yesterday. Someone left a file on my desk. I didn't blink. Oh. Yes. She sipped her wine, her voice careful. Unsigned addendum. Strange handwriting. How odd, I said. Maybe the cleaning crew misplaced something. She studied me, that calculating stare she got from our father. Maybe. My mother's voice cut in quickly, desperate for peace. Let's not talk business tonight. Please. But Emily wasn't done. I thought the company records were secure. Unless someone still had access. Her words hung between us. My husband shifted beside me, uneasy. I placed my fork down gently. Emily, if you're worried about security, I'd suggest you talk to Ethan. He's been there longer than any of us. A faint color rose in her cheeks. She wasn't expecting that. I might, she said softly. The rest of dinner passed in fragments. Clinking cutlery, shallow laughter, glances that lasted too long. And then dessert. Lemon pie. Of course. When my mother served it, she smiled, unaware. But Emily's eyes met mine as the plate touched the table. The same pie from last night. The same garnish. The same message hidden under sweetness. I lifted my fork slowly. Delicious, I said. Her lips curved. I knew you'd like it. Something inside me hardened. This wasn't an olive branch. It was a warning disguised as kindness. He was testing me, seeing if I'd flinch. I didn't. After dinner, while my parents cleaned the kitchen, Emily followed me to the hallway. Her perfume hit first. Sharp, floral, expensive. She whispered, "You've been busy." I turned slightly. "So have you." She smirked. "Whatever you're doing, end it now. You don't know what you're getting into." I met her gaze. "Don't I?" Her voice dropped. "You think you're clever. But you forget, this company doesn't run on paper. It runs on people. And people talk." I stepped closer. "Then let them talk. I'm done being quiet." For a moment neither of us moved. Her breath trembled just slightly. Then she smiled, brittle and cold. "You always did love drama. And you always did underestimate me." She turned, heels clicking against the tile. "This isn't over." "It never is," I murmured. When I left that night, the air outside was biting cold. The stars were faint, swallowed by cloud. I stood by my car, gripping the steering wheel, letting the chill anchor me. My phone buzzed again. Marianne's message. Asterisk, the board meeting date is confirmed. They'll all be there. Asterisk. I read it twice, then looked back at the house. Through the dining room window I could see them laughing again, pretending everything was fine. I smiled faintly. Let them laugh. Tomorrow they'd learn what cold really feels like. For the first time since my husband died, I felt his presence again. Not in grief but in guidance. I sat in the car outside their house, watching the lights flicker through the curtains. The same house where I'd spent countless Sunday dinners pretending to belong. Tonight, it stood like a stage. Quiet, expectant, unaware that the final act had already begun. The driveway was full. Julia's new car, my father's sedan, even Emily's dusty SUV. They were all here. I'd been invited, of course. Just a family discussion, Julia had said over the phone, her tone sugar-coated and strained. We should clear the air before things get complicated. Complicated. She had no idea how complicated it already was. I turned off the engine and waited. The clock on the dashboard glowed 6:58 p.m. Dinner would start at 7. Punctuality was a family religion and I'd never dared break it, until now. I stayed until 7:10, letting them wonder. I wanted their nerves to simmer before I walked in. When I finally stepped through the door, the air felt heavy, like the house was holding its breath. The faint smell of rosemary drifted from the kitchen, but underneath it lingered something else, unease. "Clara," my mother said, forcing a smile. "You're late." I slipped off my coat and hung it beside my father's. Traffic, I replied simply. My voice was calm, steady. I wanted them to hear the difference, to sense the shift. Julia stood at the dining table, arranging plates that didn't need rearranging. Her hands were too precise, too rehearsed. She didn't look up. We've been waiting. I can see that. The table looked familiar, our mother's silverware, the linen runner from last Christmas. But there was an emptiness in the air, something unspoken pressing down on all of us. We ate in silence for the first few minutes. The clinking of forks on china was the only sound. My father cleared his throat, glancing between us. Your sister tells me there's been some confusion with the paperwork, he said finally. Julia smiled, tight, brittle. Just a misunderstanding. I set my fork down, folded my napkin and looked directly at her. A misunderstanding that somehow removed my name from the company I co-founded? Her jaw stiffened. You signed off on the transfer, Clara. It was part of the restructuring after David's passing. No, I said softly. I didn't. The silence stretched. My mother's hand trembled as she reached for her glass. Girls, please. I interrupted gently, never raising my voice. Do you remember the year you convinced me to expand? You said we'd be equals. Julia's eyes met mine, hard, defensive. We were. I leaned forward slightly. Then why was my signature forged? A chair creaked. My father looked from me to Julia, confusion shadowing his face. Julia? What's she talking about? Julia's smile wavered. Dad, she's mistaken. She's grieving, she's reading things wrong. I slid a folded paper from my purse and laid it on the table. The candlelight caught the edge of the page, glinting faintly. Am I? She didn't touch it. I watched the color drain from her cheeks. That was all the confirmation I needed. My father reached for the document, adjusting his glasses. His lips moved silently as he read. When he looked up, his expression was different. Smaller somehow, like he'd aged years in seconds. Julia. This isn't Clara's signature. The house went still. Even the ticking clock seemed to stop. Julia's voice cracked slightly. You can't prove anything. I already have, I said. It wasn't a threat. It was a statement. I didn't tell them about Ethan's files or the scanned copies, or the lawyer waiting for my call. I didn't need to, not yet. I wanted them to feel the uncertainty first. The dread. My mother's fork slipped from her fingers and clattered against the plate. How could this happen? She whispered. Julia straightened, her mask slipping back on. Clara's twisting things. She's angry, she's confused, she's prepared, I said quietly. That stopped her. Her lips parted, but no words came out. The look in her eyes shifted from arrogance to fear, and then to something sharper. Calculation. She was already thinking of her next move. Excuse me, she said abruptly, standing. I need some air. She walked toward the patio doors, her heels clicking like a metronome. I waited until the glass door slid shut behind her. My father spoke first. Clara, if what you're saying is true, this could ruin us. It already did, I said, looking at him. You just didn't hear it fall yet. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. My mother began to cry softly, the kind of quiet, helpless sob that fills every corner of a room. For a long time none of us spoke. The house seemed to hold its breath again, walls listening, floorboards remembering. I could almost feel my husband there, silent but approving. Finally I rose from my chair. I'll give her tonight, I said. Tomorrow I make it official. My father's voice trembled. Official. I'm filing to reclaim what's mine. The words hung in the air, heavy and irreversible. I turned to leave, but my mother caught my wrist. Claire, please. She's still your sister. I looked down at her hand, soft, trembling, familiar. Then she should have remembered that before she forgot who I was. I pulled away gently and walked toward the door. Outside, the night was colder than I expected. The wind tugged at my hair, and somewhere in the distance I heard thunder rolling, faint, patient. I stepped off the porch and paused at the edge of the yard. The lights in the dining room flickered, then dimmed. Through the window I saw my parents still sitting there, two shadows frozen in disbelief. Julia hadn't come back inside. For a moment I wondered if she was watching me from the dark. I turned my head slightly, scanning the yard. There, by the garden fence, a faint glow of a phone screen. He was there. I walked to my car, my shoes crunching softly on the gravel. I didn't rush. Let her watch. Let her think she still had time to fix it. As I reached the car door, my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. You shouldn't have shown them that file. I stared at the screen, then at the faint light still flickering by the fence. My pulse slowed, cold and deliberate. I typed back 2 words. Too late. Then I drove away. The house behind me faded into darkness, but its silence lingered, thick, unsettled, almost alive. I could feel the weight of generations pressing down on those walls, secrets buried under years of dinners and smiles. They'd built that home on shared lies. Tonight I cracked the foundation. The storm broke before I reached the main road, rain hitting the windshield in sharp bursts. My wipers struggled to keep up, but I didn't slow down. My thoughts were louder than the thunder. At a red light, I caught my reflection in the rearview mirror. My face looked older, harder, but there was a clarity in my eyes I hadn't seen in years. The phone buzzed again. Another message. Meet me tomorrow, 9 a.m. boardroom. No name this time, but I didn't need one. I knew who it was. Julia wasn't finished. I exhaled slowly, a bitter smile curling at the edges of my lips. Neither am I whispered. The light turned green. I pressed my foot on the gas and didn't look back. Behind me, the house that had once held my family fell silent for good. The rain hadn't stopped all night. It trailed down my windshield in thin silver threads, catching the first light of morning. I parked in the same spot I used to when I worked there, just outside the office's side entrance where no one noticed comings or goings. The message had been clear. Meet me tomorrow, 9 a.m. boardroom. No name, but Julia didn't need one. It was 8:55 when I stepped inside. The receptionist, new, young and uncertain, blinked up at me. Good morning, ma'am. Do you have an appointment? Yes, I said, my tone steady. They're expecting me. The building smelled the same, fresh paint over old secrets. I walked down the hall, the click of my shoes echoing on the tile. For a second I felt my chest tighten, remembering all the mornings I'd hurried here, coffee in hand, eager to prove I belonged. But today I wasn't proving anything. Today I was claiming what was already mine. When I pushed open the boardroom door, the air hit me, cold, deliberate, rehearsed. Everyone was there. Julia sat near the center, hair pinned tight, smile tighter. My father at the far end, looking older than I remembered. My mother beside him, her eyes swollen, her hands folded neatly like a prayer she'd stopped believing in. Clara, Julia said smoothly. You came. I did, I replied. You asked for me. Her lips curved. I thought it would be best to clear things privately before unnecessary rumors start spreading. I took the empty chair, his chair. My late husband's. The one no one had touched since his funeral. I saw the flicker in her eyes when I did it. This won't take long, I said. She tried to keep her tone light. Good. We all have busy schedules. The others shifted uncomfortably. Papers rustled, pens clicked. Small sounds that betrayed big nerves. I opened my briefcase and placed a thin folder on the table. These are the original partnership documents, I began. Signed, dated, and witnessed. My name was on every one of them until someone decided to rewrite history. Julia leaned back, pretending calm. You're making baseless claims, Clara. We all know how stress can. Stop, I said softly. It wasn't loud, but it silenced her. My father exhaled, slow and heavy. Julia, just let her speak. I continued, sliding another paper forward. This is the amended contract. The one submitted 6 months ago. See the signature. I pointed. It's mine. Or rather, it's supposed to be. Julia crossed her arms. You can't prove it's not. Oh, I can. I pressed a button on the remote I'd brought and the screen on the wall flickered to life. A video appeared, Ethan's recording. Clear as day, time-stamped. Julia sitting in this very room, guiding a junior accountant through the edits. Her voice steady, explaining how I'd agreed to step back after David's passing. My mother gasped. My father's hand went to his temple. Julia's face went pale. How did you? Ethan kept everything, I said. Every memo, every revision, every email you deleted from my account. The room filled with the hum of the projector. I let the video run for exactly 20 seconds, long enough for them to hear her voice, not long enough for her to recover. Then I switched it off. Silence. I waited a beat, then spoke. You took my husband's legacy, my work, and my name. You built an empire on loyalty and family values. But the truth? You built it on theft. Julia stood abruptly. This is ridiculous. You have no legal claim. Already filed, I said. Yesterday morning. Her mouth fell open. I didn't come here for permission, I continued. I came for closure. She glanced around the table looking for allies. None met her eyes. Dad, she tried, her voice shaking, you can't let her do this. He looked at her for a long time before speaking. You did this to yourself. Her hand trembled as she reached for her glass of water. The ice clinked softly, echoing in the hollow silence. I rose slowly, collecting my papers. The board will vote next week. But we both know how it'll go. You've burned every bridge you had. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. You think this makes you better than me? No, I said evenly. It makes me free. Her expression cracked. For the first time in years she looked small, like the girl who used to follow me around the garden asking for help with her homework. For a second something twisted in my chest, an old ache I thought I'd buried. But it passed. Freedom sometimes looks like cruelty when you've lived your life under someone else's control. The meeting ended in fragments. My father's sighs, my mother's quiet tears, Julia's footsteps retreating down the hall. When I stepped outside, the rain had stopped. The world smelled new, washed clean. I stood under the overhang, breathing it in. Marianne was waiting by the curb just like she promised. How'd it go? As expected, I said. She smiled faintly. So it's done. Almost. I reached into my coat pocket and handed her a sealed envelope. Deliver this to the press if anything happens to me before next Friday. Her eyes widened. Clara. Just a precaution, I said. Julia doesn't lose gracefully. Marianne hesitated, then nodded. You've thought of everything. I smiled. I've had years to think. That evening I went home to an empty house. I set my briefcase on the table and poured myself a cup of tea this time. No wine, no trembling hands. Just quiet. I looked around the dining room. The same table, the same chairs, but the energy was different. The house didn't feel haunted anymore. On impulse I set the table for one, real china, cloth napkin, silver cutlery. I roasted a small chicken, mashed potatoes, and made a slice of lemon pie, his favorite. When everything was ready, I sat down at the head of the table. The chair felt right, solid, earned. I took a deep breath and smiled. Halfway through the meal, the phone rang. I let it ring twice before answering. Clara. Julia's voice. Tight. Frantic. You ruined me. I said nothing. You think anyone's going to believe you're innocent? You think the board cares? They'll replace us both. You'll have nothing. Her words tumbled out, sharp and desperate. Maybe, I said quietly. But at least I'll have peace. You, her voice cracked. You don't understand what you've done. I do, I whispered. I ended the cycle. There was a pause, long, brittle. Then she hung up. The silence after felt pure. I looked at the candle flickering beside my plate. Its flame danced lazily, casting soft light across the room. For the first time in years, the house didn't feel like a burden. It felt like mine. 2 days later, the board voted. Unanimous. Every share, every document, every trace of the company was restored to me. Julia resigned for health reasons. I didn't attend the meeting. I didn't need to. Instead, I went to the cemetery. I stood beside David's headstone, the sky clear, the air cool and forgiving. They tried to erase us, I said softly. But I remembered everything. A breeze passed through the trees, gentle as a sigh. I smiled. The rain hadn't stopped all night. It trailed down my windshield in thin silver threads, catching the first light of morning. I parked in the same spot I used to when I worked there, just outside the office's side entrance where no one noticed comings or goings. The message had been clear. Meet me tomorrow, 9 a.m. boardroom. No name, but Julia didn't need one. It was 8:55 when I stepped inside. The receptionist, new, young, and uncertain, blinked up at me. Good morning, ma'am. Do you have an appointment? Yes, I said, my tone steady. They're expecting me. The building smelled the same, fresh paint over old secrets. I walked down the hall, the click of my shoes echoing on the tile. For a second I felt my chest tighten, remembering all the mornings I'd hurried here, coffee in hand, eager to prove I belonged. But today I wasn't proving anything. Today I was claiming what was already mine. When I pushed open the boardroom door, the air hit me, cold, deliberate, rehearsed. Everyone was there. Julia sat near the center, hair pinned tight, smile tighter. My father at the far end, looking older than I remembered. My mother beside him, her eyes swollen, her hands folded neatly like a prayer she'd stopped believing in. "Clara," Julia said smoothly. "You came." "I did," I replied. "You asked for me." Her lips curved. "I thought it would be best to clear things privately before unnecessary rumors start spreading." I took the empty chair, his chair. My late husband's. The one no one had touched since his funeral. I saw the flicker in her eyes when I did it. "This won't take long," I said. She tried to keep her tone light. "Good. We all have busy schedules." The others shifted uncomfortably. Papers rustled, pens clicked. Small sounds that betrayed big nerves. I opened my briefcase and placed a thin folder on the table. "These are the original partnership documents," I began. "Signed, dated, and witnessed. My name was on every one of them until someone decided to rewrite history." Julia leaned back, pretending calm. "You're making baseless claims, Clara. We all know how stress can—" "Stop," I said softly. It wasn't loud, but it silenced her. My father exhaled, slow and heavy. "Julia, just let her speak." I continued, sliding another paper forward. "This is the amended contract. The one submitted 6 months ago. See the signature." I pointed. "It's mine. Or rather, it's supposed to be." Julia crossed her arms. "You can't prove it's not." "Oh, I can." I pressed a button on the remote I'd brought and the screen on the wall flickered to life. A video appeared, Ethan's recording. Clear as day, time-stamped. Julia sitting in this very room, guiding a junior accountant through the edits. Her voice steady, explaining how I'd agreed to step back after David's passing. My mother gasped. My father's hand went to his temple. Julia's face went pale. How did you?" "Ethan kept everything," I said. "Every memo, every revision, every email you deleted from my account." The room filled with the hum of the projector. I let the video run for exactly 20 seconds, long enough for them to hear her voice, not long enough for her to recover. Then I switched it off. Silence. I waited a beat, then spoke. "You took my husband's legacy, my work, and my name. You built an empire on loyalty and family values. But the truth? You built it on theft." Julia stood abruptly. "This is ridiculous. You have no legal claim." "Already filed," I said. "Yesterday morning." Her mouth fell open. "I didn't come here for permission," I continued. "I came for closure." She glanced around the table looking for allies. None met her eyes. "Dad," she tried, her voice shaking, "you can't let her do this." He looked at her for a long time before speaking. "You did this to yourself." Her hand trembled as she reached for her glass of water. The ice clinked softly, echoing in the hollow silence. I rose slowly, collecting my papers. "The board will vote next week. But we both know how it'll go. You've burned every bridge you had." She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "You think this makes you better than me?" "No," I said evenly. "It makes me free." Her expression cracked. For the first time in years she looked small, like the girl who used to follow me around the garden asking for help with her homework. For a second something twisted in my chest, an old ache I thought I'd buried. But it passed. Freedom sometimes looks like cruelty when you've lived your life under someone else's control. The meeting ended in fragments. My father's sighs, my mother's quiet tears, Julia's footsteps retreating down the hall. When I stepped outside, the rain had stopped. The world smelled new, washed clean. I stood under the overhang, breathing it in. Marianne was waiting by the curb just like she promised. "How'd it go?" "As expected," I said. She smiled faintly. "So it's done." "Almost." I reached into my coat pocket and handed her a sealed envelope. "Deliver this to the press if anything happens to me before next Friday." Her eyes widened. "Clara." "Just a precaution," I said. "Julia doesn't lose gracefully." Marianne hesitated, then nodded. "You've thought of everything." I smiled. "I've had years to think." That evening I went home to an empty house. I set my briefcase on the table and poured myself a cup of tea this time. No wine, no trembling hands. Just quiet. I looked around the dining room. The same table, the same chairs, but the energy was different. The house didn't feel haunted anymore. On impulse, I set the table for one, real china, cloth napkin, silver cutlery. I roasted a small chicken, mashed potatoes, and made a slice of lemon pie, his favorite. When everything was ready, I sat down at the head of the table. The chair felt right, solid, earned. I took a deep breath and smiled. Halfway through the meal, the phone rang. I let it ring twice before answering. Clara. Julia's voice. Tight. Frantic. You ruined me. I said nothing. You think anyone's going to believe you're innocent? You think the board cares? They'll replace us both. You'll have nothing. Her words tumbled out, sharp and desperate. Maybe, I said quietly. But at least I'll have peace. You, her voice cracked. You don't understand what you've done. I do, I whispered. I ended the cycle. There was a pause, long, brittle. Then she hung up. The silence after felt pure. I looked at the candle flickering beside my plate. Its flame danced lazily, casting soft light across the room. For the first time in years, the house didn't feel like a burden. It felt like mine. 2 days later, the board voted. Unanimous. Every share, every document, every trace of the company was restored to me. Julia resigned for health reasons. I didn't attend the meeting. I didn't need to. Instead, I went to the cemetery. I stood beside David's headstone, the sky clear, the air cool and forgiving. They tried to erase us, I said softly. But I remembered everything. A breeze passed through the trees, gentle as a sigh. I smiled. That Sunday my parents came for dinner. My mother brought flowers, my father brought an apology he didn't know how to say. We didn't talk about Julia. We didn't have to. As I carved the chicken, I caught my reflection in the window. Still, composed, stronger than I remembered. When I set the dish on the table, my mother hesitated. You're sitting there now? She asked, gesturing to the chair at the head. Yes, I said. I think it's time. They exchanged a look, uncertain, but said nothing. The meal was simple, quiet, filled with small, careful laughter. For the first time, it didn't feel like performance. It felt like family. After they left, I stayed behind to clear the plates. The candle had burned low, its wax pooled like melted gold. I sat again at the head of the table and ran my hand over the wood grain. Smooth, steady, scarred, but beautiful. This was where it all began. And where it ended. When I finally rose to leave the dining room, I glanced once more at the empty chair across from me, the one Julia used to occupy, full of pride and poison. I whispered, You should have known, sister. The woman at the head of the table isn't the one who takes it. She's the one who earns it. Then I blew out the candle. The room fell silent, peaceful, whole. And for the first time in my life, so did I.